Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Ichigo got married with all 10 girls part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the FANFICLOVER 2017 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. It has been 3 days since Aizen's defeat and a captain's meeting was called to discuss the condition of Ichigo Kurosaki. The captains all gathered in the meeting hall, all except Captain Unohana, when all of a sudden the peace and serenity of the was rattled by a scream that could be heard all the way to the captain's meeting hall. What was that, or who was it? Captain Hitsugaya asked. That was Ichigo. Yukitake replied. It was? Hitsugaya inquired. Yes, it was. The head captain replied this time. What all of you are hearing is the end result of Ichigo Kurosaki's use of the sacrificial technique called no Jutsuga, or the final Jutsuga. The head captain explained. A technique like ours is one of last resort, not because of the immense power it generates, but because of the immense strain that is put on the user's body. If a way isn't found to ease his pain and reduce the strain on his body, one of two things will happen. One, he will lose his powers forever, and the second is the strain on his body will kill him. The head captain further explained. Shocked gasps were heard around the room, especially from Captain Soifun, Lieutenant Matsumoto, and Rukia Kichiki, all three of whom had taken quite a liking to the poor young man who at this moment was in the squad 4 screaming in agony. Just then the door swung open, everyone stood and looked to see who had the audacity to interrupt a captain's meeting, only to find it was Uruchi Shihoin standing there. Lady Shihoin, I trust you know the penalty for interrupting a captain's meeting. The head captain said. Cram it, old man, I am in no mood for your holier-than-thou bullshit today. Uruchi exclaimed. The outburst shocked everyone to say the least, but they understood she loved the boy after all, and she had been by his side from the moment he had been brought to Squad 4. Uruchi, how's Ichigo-kun? Shunsui asked. Not good. Unohana is doing everything she can, but at this point all she can do is try to keep him comfortable. She replied. Just then the doors swung open again to reveal two young ladies. Well, your assessment is correct, Uruchi Shihoin, there is however something that can be done for him. One of them replied. There is? Uruchi asked. Wait a minute before we get into who you are. She exclaimed. Forgive me where my manners are. Maybe the answer will become clearer to all of you if my partner reveals her blade to you. The woman replied. Just then a blade was shown to everyone in the room. The blade was a short sword, it had a green hilt and a hexagonal tsuba. Everyone instantly knew what that blade was. Kyoka Sujetsu. Uruchi screamed. This put everyone instantly on guard. Indeed, Lady Shihoin, I am Kyoka Sujetsu and this my partner, the Kyoka Sujetsu said. What are Aizen's abominations doing here? Soifun screamed. Silence, fool. Neither the Hijyoku or myself are part of that creature anymore, you would do well to remember that. Kyoka spat venomously, and from then on everyone could tell she truly hated her former wielder. What are you doing here, Kyoka-chan? Shunsui asked. HHH. Many of you are not aware of this, but when I was bonded to that foolish arrogant monster, I found out what he was planning and little by little started suppressing his power until he caught on. However, by that time it was too late for him to do anything about it. I had sealed away approximately 50% of his full power, which is why he needed them in the first place. If I hadn't sealed away half of his power, none of you would be here now, Ichigo would be dead, and the Soul Society would be destroyed. Kyoka explained. Shocked gasps were heard throughout the room. Okay, Uruchi said. But what does that have to do with your presence here? She asked. Oh-chan and I didn't like what he had done and what he was planning to do, so we decided that if a chance ever came, we would leave and find a wielder that was more worthy of our power. When Aizen's power was weakened in the moments just before his death, we took our chance and took up residence in a new soul with the individual's permission, of course. Kyoka said. So Uruchi started to ask. Just then it dawned on Uruchi who their new master was. She didn't even need to finish asking the question as it had died on her right there. Correct, Lady Shihoin, Ichigo Kurosaki is our new master. Kyoka said with a great deal of pride. Just then the head captain ordered that they be removed immediately, but before she could move, the flashed in front of the head captain with her blade at the head captain's and said, if she even tries to follow that order, I will cut off your head before you so much as blink. Well then, monster, the head captain said with a hint of venom in his voice. What would you have me do? He asked. Simply leave me with him. Everyone in this room knows that Ichigo-kun is the kind of man that doesn't abuse his power like Aizen did, but instead uses his for the sake of others. I shouldn't have to prove that point to any of you after all. Look at all his deeds and what he's done for the soul of society. She stated plainly. At this declaration everyone knew she had a point, and it was by majority vote of 12-1 that they should stay with Ichigo under the condition that Kyoka and the Heijyoku teach him how to control his power, as well as theirs, to which they stated that they planned on helping in that regard anyway. But they did say he would have to stay in the Soul Society and learn the 4 Soul Reaper arts under the guidance of Master Soul Reapers, which was unanimously agreed to. In fact, some of the captains had evil-looking smirks on their faces, 2 especially, which Kyoka and Heijyoku caught on to. Captains Kurasuchi and Zaraki, neither one of you will be allowed anywhere near our master. We want him to be trained, not killed or experimented on. Kyoka said. Suffice to say they didn't like being singled out like that. Kurasuchi continued to protest, saying, I demand that Ichigo Kurosaki be given to me as a research specimen. The head captain promptly said no to the demand. Then Shunsui interjected, Captain Kurasuchi. Do you have any idea the amount of problems that you're asking would cause? Every single person in this room would be on Ichigo-kun's shit list if we gave in to your requests and he found out about it. I can't speak for the other captains, but I for one do not wish to wind up a pincushion. Shunsui Urichi called out. There are 2 other shit lists you're forgetting about, namely mine and Ichigo's father Isin Shiba. Hell, Kurasuchi is already on mine for suggesting such a thing. She elaborated further. Now on to other matters. She said. Kyoka, all this talk of training him is fine and all, but if we don't find a way to help him, he's going to lose his powers or worse. Urichi said. We are aware of Urichi-chan, that is why we are here, but first things, there are 2 Arankor women in the room with him, whose futures are tied to him. They are not to be harmed in any way. She ordered. Why are they here? Toshiro asked. Believe it or not, they are in love with him and are just as devoted to him as Urichi is. Ho-chan said. So you're saying we should let such a relationship progress? Soifin asked. Why not? Heijyoku asked in return. Once I complete their evolution, such a pairing might prove fruitful, even beneficial to the Soul Society, she said. Just then Heijyoku collapsed. Ho-chan, what's wrong? Kyoka asked. It's Ichigo. Something is wrong. Ho-chan said. Kyoka turned to Urichi and Soifin. Can you 2 get Ho-chan back to Ichigo fast? She asked. I'll be right behind you, and I'll be bringing the rest of the captains with me. We will need their help if we are to save my master. She said. Urichi flashed away with Heijyoku, and 5 seconds later and the rest of the captains took off tight behind them. Kyoka-chan. Shunsui said. When he was acknowledged, he asked. What do you need us for? What can we do to help besides getting in Unohana's way? Simple, Shunsui-chan. I will use my powers to transport all of you inside Ichigo's soul so that you may help him destroy what is causing him such agony. She said. What do you mean? The head captain asked. By this time they arrived at the large private room that Ichigo was in at Squad 4. All of you know that the final Jutsuga is a sacrificial technique, but what you don't know is that the after effects of the technique create an entity in the inner world of the user that is not only a direct reflection of the user's feelings at the time the technique was used times 100. But the entity attacks the user's inner world with the same level of power that the user had at the time the technique was used, which is causing the pain that Ichigo-kun is going through now. Kyoka said. How much power are we talking about? Kenpachi asked. In terms that all of you could understand. If you were to take the full combined power of Captains Kichiki, Unohana, Kairaku, Yukitake, and Yamamoto with, multiply it by a factor of 20, that would only equal about 35% of Ichigo's maximum. Kyoka said. And you want us to fight against that? Kenpachi exclaimed. Yes, but not for long. She said. How long? Kamamura asked. Only as long as it takes for Ho-chan and I to restore Ichigo-kun's energy to the point where he could land a killing blow on that thing. I would say no more than 5 minutes, maybe 15 at the most. We just need you to keep it away from us while we do our work. After that you can sit back and watch the show. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see how his fighting abilities have improved, and no, you may not take any samples of his inner world. The weakened state Ichigo is in right now, if we don't do this he won't just lose his powers, he'll die. Kyoka said. That was all anyone needed to hear, and the head captain gave Kyoka the go again, and a few seconds later they were all in Ichigo's inner world. Ichigo's inner world. They had arrived. In the distance they could hear explosions and shouting, but before they departed for the battlefield, Kyoka gave them one last word of warning. Before we continue on to the battlefield, a word of caution. Some of you will see a younger version of Iwich the Quincy King in his inner world. You will also see Ichigo's inner hollow fighting alongside him. You are to say nothing, you may acknowledge their presence, after that get on with your job. Kyoka said. Why can't we say anything about it? Toshiro asked. Because that is the subject matter concerning his family, and you don't have the right to bring it up. That is for his father to do, and his father only understands the young captain. She said. Toshiro nodded at this, which Kyoka was satisfied with. But what does that have to do with anything? He continued to press for an answer. Because Hitsugaya-kun, his mother was a Quincy who was attacked by a hollow called White that Aizen created, and his father was a captain in the Gate 13, and your predecessor, of course all of you already know that, she said. Yes, we know. I can't believe Captain Shiba is still alive. Toshiro said. Yes, he is very much alive and he will be here soon. Kyoka said. This shocked everyone, but they said nothing. But that still doesn't explain things about Kyoka-chan. Shunsui said. That is all I am prepared to tell you at this time, Shun-chan, but Zangetsu, Shinso, and I will try to get Ichigo to talk to Isen-kun about it, and maybe then his questions along with all of yours will finally be answered. She said. Wait a minute, you said, did you not? The head captain inquired. Yes, I did, Yamamoto Satecho. She answered. But why would he be here? That is Jin Ichimaru Zanpakuto. He said. Yes, you are correct. Jin Ichimaru was not the traitor all you believed him to be. Kyoka answered. Then why betray the soul of society? Captain Hitsugaya questioned with a venomous tone to his voice. He did it so that he could get close to Aizen for the purpose of killing the bastard. Aizen hurt Ranjiku Matsumoto many years ago when she was still a child by forcefully removing part of her soul. Jin found her unconscious shortly before he saw Aizen feeding her soul to his incomplete. From then on, Jin vowed vengeance against Aizen. So I suggest you change your tone, little boy. Kyoka spat out venomously. As they all approached the battlefield, they could all see what Kyoka was talking about. They saw a 60-foot-tall version of Ichigo fighting his hollow, and what Ichigo believed to be his and his hollow weren't doing so well. Hey, somebody call for reinforcements, Shunsui called out, which earned him a smack from Yamamoto's cane. We didn't call for any, but now that you're here we could use the help. The hollow said, breathing heavily. You got it. Shinsui said as all the gathered captains released theirs and began the war for Ichigo's soul. Come on, why won't you die already? Ichigo's hollow shouted. This is what happens when you use the final Jutsuga, it causes unimaginable pain. But did Blockhead listen to me? No, he just went ahead and used it and put his entire soul, not to mention life, at risk like a fucking idiot. He continued to rant. Swish, parry, the hollow, and the captains were dodging the doppelganger's attacks, and then they all heard his hollow scream out Jutsuga Tenshu, cleaving the monster in half only to have it reform itself. Outside of Ichigo's inner world, his room within Squad 4 was surrounded with friends and loved ones. His bed was surrounded by all the women who loved him. Yoruichi and her parents were there, Lisa Anohana, the adopted daughter of the head captain, Tia Haribal, Neliel, Rukia. Orihime and Isane Katesu, they didn't care if they had to share him, they loved him, and they wanted him regardless of how weird it may seem. Every time Ichigo screamed in pain, the women in the room winced, they were all on the verge of tears. Here was a man that they all loved, respected, considered a friend and thought of as family, and they were helpless, they couldn't help him. Just then his screaming stopped and he began to relax. Anohana, what happened? Yoruichi asked with tears in her eyes, fearing the worst. I don't know. She said just as the captains returned from Ichigo's inner world. Moments earlier. Hey guys, thanks for the assistance. I appreciate it. They all turned to see Ichigo smiling at them. Yeah, Ichigo, you're finally up. Are you ready to finish this? Because we can't hold this thing off much longer. This thing is strong, didn't know you had this kind of power. Shinji said. Enough of all the chatter, destroy this thing so we can get out here. Kens commanded. Well Shinji, I didn't know I had this kind of power either until it came time to tap into it. Ichigo responded. But yeah, I'm ready. You guys did your job, now it's time I do mine, and you guys might want to stand back. He commanded. They did as they were told. Just then the monster spotted Ichigo and swung its massive sword at Ichigo, who caught it with his bare hand. Ichigo promptly swung his own, cutting the larger sword in half and tossing the half still in his hand to the side. Toshiro looked dumbfounded. Amazing, after all the time we've been dealing with this thing, he shows up and cuts that monster's blade in half like it was nothing. Unbelievable, he said. The other captains just nodded their heads in agreement. The head captain began to see Ichigo as his replacement when he retired after the display of power they all just witnessed. Just then they all saw Ichigo make an arching motion with his sword, with the blade edge facing the monster, and in a burst of speed far faster than he'd been known for, he disappeared, leaving only an afterimage. If that wasn't shocking enough, what happened next was downright confusing. Ichigo appeared in front of the captains with a green viscous fluid dripping from his blade. They all looked at the monster and saw what Ichigo had done as the cuts he placed became visible. Ichigo had cut the monster over 10,000 times from the time he used Flash Step to when he appeared in front of the captains. Ichigo flung the green fluid off his blade, and as he did the monster fell apart never to return. Even his hollow was shocked by what just happened, but at the same time he was also proud of Ichigo for finally listening to him. Kyoka and walked up to the captains, thanked them for their assistance and sent them home. Tell me, gentlemen, what do you think of an arranged marriage between our clans? Katsuhito asked. Isin is your son and technically your heir, Yamamoto, even though Anohana is your adopted daughter, that still makes her nobility, and I can tell she loves him. Your sister Rukia is in the same boat, just think of what such a marriage could do not only for our clans, but for the Soul Society as well. He said. What do you mean? Byakuya asked. Think about it, Kichiki. The Shiba clan is above the 4 great noble families in status. They're one step below the king himself in terms of social status, not even Central 46 can touch them regardless of what they do. An alliance between our 4 clans would help us help the Soul Society in ways no one ever thought were possible. In particular, it would give us the unique advantage of putting Central 46 in their place when they do something stupid, as well as keep what Aizen did from happening again. Katsuhito said. Very well, Byakuya said. I agree as well, Yamamoto said. You all know my opinion, Katsuhito said. Well, listen, the ball's in your court as the humans say. Katsuhito said. I wouldn't have a problem with such an alliance, however what about the other girls and the Kasumioji clan, they will feel slighted. Isin said. Well, as for the other girls, let them marry him as well, including the Arankers, they said their evolutions weren't complete. As all of you know, polygamy isn't taboo in the Soul Society. My great-grandfather had 20 wives, all of whom he loved dearly, and they knew it. As for the Kasumioji clan, you and I will approach them tomorrow and ask. The head of the family is a good friend of mine, and she has an older daughter named Yuzume who is not only unmarried, but also a good friend of your son's. From what I recall, she couldn't stop talking about Ichigo. Katsuhito said. Alright, I say let's do it. You guys know that the Shiba clan has no love for those arrogant fools in Central 46, so any chance we have to really fuck up their plans, we always take it. Isin said. But then it's settled. Isin, you and I will go and talk to Kasumioji tomorrow. Now, gentlemen, I suggest we all get some sleep. We have weddings to plan. Katsuhito said with a smirk. Wait, Isin said, we also need to talk to the other parties involved tonight. I suggest we talk to them privately after everyone else is gone. Byakuya suggested. All 4 gentlemen nodded their heads and returned to Ichigo's room. Yamaji, where do you run off to? Shunsui asked. I was in the hall talking with Isin, Katsuhito, and Byakuya. He replied. Now then, would everyone except Orihime, Rukia, Lisa, Retsu, Yoruichi, Isane, Neliel, and Tia please leave, there are matters that are of a private nature that must be discussed, Yamamoto said. With this everyone complied and left. With everyone gone, they began their conversation when Ichigo woke up. Yuzu and Karen ran up and gave their brother a big teary-eyed hug, as did the other women in the room. Then Rukia punched him in the arm. Ow. What was that for a midget? Ichigo yelled. For scaring the hell out of me, that's what. She yelled back. How did I do that? He asked. For using that technique and putting yourself in a coma, that's how. She yelled. I didn't have much of a choice. If I didn't, then you and everyone else I care about would be dead right now. Ichigo said. You don't know that. She interjected. Yes, I do. He yelled back. I would never be able to forgive myself, much less look in a mirror, if I had a technique that could end the war and didn't use it, simply because you wouldn't have wanted me to. My mother always taught me to put the needs of others before my own, regardless of anyone else's personal feelings. To do anything less would not only be disrespectful to everyone in this room, but it would also dishonor her memory, and that is something I will not do. Is that in any way unclear to you? Ichigo shouted back. Rukia was shocked by his outburst, but she and everyone else was also very touched by what was said. Ichigo felt his actions not only showed his respect for them, but also to honor the memory of his late mother. It actually brought tears to the eyes of women in the room and made them love even more. Ichigo. Isin said to get his attention. First off, I am very proud of you, my boy. Isin said. Thanks, Dad. Ichigo replied. The second thing I want to say or discuss with you is the reason all these lovely ladies are still here. Isin said. At those words, everyone looked at Isin. Ichigo. Katsuhito, Yamaji, Byakuya and I were talking, and we thought that it was time for an alliance between the Shiba family and the 4 great noble families of the society. The reason is because none of us harbor any positive feelings for Central 46, and we could keep them under our thumbs, not to mention out of our hair. However, also because all these ladies love you dearly, so we arranged a marriage between you and all of them, to bring all of the families gathered in this room under the banner of the Shiba family, as well as your friend Yuzume from the Kasumioji family. We were also including Lisa, the Arankers, Orihime, and Isane as well. Isin said. I don't have a problem with it, Dad. I would be a fucking moron to say no, as long as they agree with it. I will not force them into something that they don't want. I'm not like that bastard. Ichigo said. Well, ladies, is this something you call agree with and get behind? Ichigo asked. A round of enthusiastic nods were his only reply. Well, Dad, I'd say you just got your answer. Ichigo said. When will you be talking with Yuzume? He asked. That will be done tomorrow. Isin said. There is another reason we wish to talk with you. Isin said. Okay dad, but before that I need 2 things, Ichigo said. Which are? His father inquired. First, head Captain Yamamoto, when I get released I will need 3 asauchi. And the second is, can I please get something to eat? I'm starving. Ichigo said. All of which was agreed to. Dad, before you say anything, I know that my inner hollow is the real Zangetsu, not the old man, just as I have also been aware that you're a Shinigami, but you have something else that you've been keeping from me, Ichigo said. I want the truth, all of it, understand? I am tired of getting jerked around and lied to by you. He yelled. His father was shocked by his son's outburst, as was everyone else in the room, but he could understand it. Okay Ichigo, the truth is, about 18 years ago I was a captain in the 13 court guard squads, to be more precise squad 10, and before your mother I was dating Ranjiku, whom I had received reports of soul reapers going missing, and I went to the human world without getting permission to just outside of Karakura town to investigate. I found the hollow in question that was later designated white, and it kicked my ass. The hollow was an artificially created Lord-class hollow created by Aizen using Shinigami soul as the base. During the fight, however, I was attacked from behind, and due to the wound I couldn't release my Bankai, and well, you know the rest. That is when I met your mother. She was a pure-blooded or act Quincy, and she killed it with 1 blow with an arrow through the head. The downside was that she was attacked by a hollow. After the fight she picked me up and took me to Kisuke's to have my injuries treated. After that we parted ways and I went back to the Soul Society. I gave my report to Yamajai and left your mother out of it. Isin said. About this time Yuzume Kasumioji and her mother Kikyo Kasumioji walked in. Ah, come on my dear, you just saved the time and trouble of coming to get you. Isin said. Yuzume nodded and said, I heard Ichigo was here and I wanted to make sure he was okay. I'm hearing Yuzume, and yeah, I'm fine, a little sore but fine. Ichigo said. Anyway, Isin said. 3 days later I went back again without permission to thank her for what she did, and to my horror, discovered that the hollow attack had put part of its soul inside Masaki. The hollow's soul had started to erode her soul, and she was headed straight for a soul suicide. That's when Kisuke made the radical suggestion to bind my soul to hers to suppress the hollow and save her life. I agreed without hesitation after hearing Kisuke's long-winded speech. This meant my time in the Soul Society was over, probably forever. After that, the rest, as they say, is history. A few years later, after she graduated college, we married, then you came along. Then about 5 years later Karen and Yuzu came along. Everything was fine until 6 years ago, that fateful night on the bank of the river, as I am sure you remember very well. Isin said. You mean when that bastard Grand Fisher killed my mother right in front of me and then later on gloated about it like it was his greatest accomplishment? Ichigo said with a twinge of hatred in his voice. Yes Ichigo, but tell us and your future wives what you went through personally, Isin said. Isin noticed the pleading look on Yuzume's face. Yes Yuzume, this includes you as well if you're okay with it, Isin said. To which she enthusiastically nodded. Ichigo's eyes started to tear up while he explained. After it happened I blamed myself. Nothing anyone could say or do could make me believe that I wasn't to blame for my mother's death, not even my sisters or your Gochin. I couldn't reconcile what had happened. From my viewpoint it all looked like a nightmare that would never end. I crawled out from underneath my mother's dead body covered in her blood. That is something that no child should ever have to witness or go through. After that I stayed away from everyone I cared about, afraid that just being near them would get them killed. I did what my mother always taught me, and in order to protect them I stayed away regardless of how selfish it may have seemed on my part. As long as they were safe, that was the only thing that mattered to me. I continued to do this until I met Rukia and then came face to face with her killer, and he bragged about what he did. Because of Rukia, Yoruchi and the rest of you, I finally found the closure I needed to stop blaming myself and get on with my life. I will never be to thank you enough. No words could ever properly express my gratitude because the words themselves do not exist, and a simple thank you would never be enough. Ichigo said. Everyone in the room was shocked about what was just said. Not only that, but Ichigo sounded so humbling and eloquent, something none of them had ever heard from him before. Ichigo, what you know thus far I'm afraid is only the truth. Said. What do you mean? He asked. I mean that while Grand Fisher may have killed Masaki, he wasn't the cause of her death. Isin replied. The entity within you that claims to be Zangetsu isn't. That is the manifestation of your Quincy powers that have been protecting you all this time. He is also a younger version of Iwich the Quincy King. Who is by the way responsible for Masaki's death. Isin said. Ichigo and everyone else looked shocked, but Ichigo was just plain pissed off. How? Ichigo asked. 6 years ago Iwich made a selection of all Quinces that he deemed impure, and unfortunately that included your mother, and took their powers as his own. The selection uses a technique called that rips the powers of Quinces away, killing them in the process. Death isn't painless. I was just grateful Masaki's death was quick because if Grand Fisher hadn't killed your mother when he did her death at the hands of Iwich would have been far more painful and gut-wrenching for you than it was when Grand Fisher killed her. By the way, you needn't worry about the Grand Fisher. I took care of him. Isin said. Just then Ichigo's spiritual pressure went through the roof and he got out of bed. Isin put a hand on his shoulder. Where are you going soon? Isin asked. Just then Ichigo punched Isin in the stomach hard. Ichigo, what was that for? Yorichi asked. That bastard lied to me. He couldn't take his head out of his for a few minutes to tell me the truth. Ichigo yelled. He was protecting you. Yorichi countered. Yorichi, I didn't need protecting, I needed the truth. The truth that he kept from me, the truth that I had a right to know. I stayed away from everyone I cared about because I thought I was to blame. I missed so much that I will never see again and lost so much time that I will never get back because of his stupidity and arrogance. Is there anything else you're keeping from me that should know about father? He spat out venomously. Just this. Isin said as he got up. You Ichigo are my son and as such you are heir to the Shiba clan and its next head. This is something that you don't have a choice about. He said. Take this. Isin said as he handed him a red envelope with a black S-wax seal on it. Going to the Shiba clan compound in the noble plain Yamaji or Katsuhito can show you the way. The seal has a special on it you will only be able to open in the presence of the clan elders. The Asauchi you need to create your true will be waiting for you there. Take Karen and Yuzu with you so that all of you can meet your grandparents. Now go, as soon as the torn muscles from your punch have healed and the bleeding stopped I will join you there and I will bring Orihime and Anohana with me. Isin said. Ichigo tried to say. I know son you have every right to be angry with me, but I kept the truth from you so that when you were finally strong enough to hear it, we could go after Iwich together and make him pay for what he's done. Isin said. When can we do that? Ichigo asked enthusiastically. As soon as you master all your, as well as the 4 Soul Reaper combat forms and your Quincy powers, which considering your growth rate should be about 5 months, by that time, you should be back to the same level of power you had when you took down Aizen and be in complete control of it. Isin replied. Ichigo turned away with a smile on his face and headed towards the Shiba clan compound, with his fiancés in tow as well Yamaji, Byakuya, and Kimiko and Katsuhito Shihoin not far behind. Ichigo and his fiancés, as well as Byakuya, Katsuhito and Kaneko Shihoin, Yamaji, and Kikyoka Sumiyoji, left Squad 4 and made their way to the Sinkamen. The moment they reached Yamamoto took out a hell butterfly from his coat pocket and then whispered to it. Just then a gate opened that would take them to the noble plain. The moment they stepped through the gate Ichigo was instantly confused and taped Yamamoto on the shoulder. Excuse me Yamaji. Ichigo said. Yes. He replied. I have a few questions that maybe you can answer to clear up my confusion. Ichigo said. Certainly my boy, asks anything you wish. He replied. Okay, I guess my first question would be why does it look so different here than in the Ichigo asked. I mean the sun is shining and it looks like a nice green pasture. The only thing missing is flowers. He said. The reason is because right now we are neither in the Serite or out of it, we are between it. You see Ichigo when the Soul King created the Soul Society and by definition the Serite he created the noble plane at the same time, but he needed a way for the nobles to get to and from their homes, so he created this place. Yamamoto replied. But what is this place? Ichigo asked. This place is a pocket dimension that was created using the Dangai as a reference, which is why it looks so different compared to the Yamaji replied. Okay, that answers my first question. Now why was that butterfly silver and orange? He asked. I thought all hell butterflies were black. He said. The answer is quite simple my boy, each noble family especially the 5 at the top have hell butterflies that are unique to their family. For instance, the Yamamoto clans is silver and orange, the Kichiki families is gold and light green, the Shihoin is tan and purple, the Kasumioji is white and dark blue, and the Shibas is red and black. On top of that the butterflies also serve a dual but unique purpose, which is a key. You cannot open the noble plane the way you would a normal, you must use the butterflies, they alone hold the power to open the path, nothing else. The reason being is, that is also a security measure put in place by the Soul King himself. You cannot get to the royal dimension without going through the noble plane first, and only nobles or those whom we invite are allowed to enter. Yamamoto explained. What is your third question Ichigo? He asked. Oh right, I was wondering what Aizen meant when he told me that the Soul King was evil. Ichigo asked. He said that to you did he? Yamaji asked. Yes sir he did. Ichigo replied. Before we go any further, have a seat at Ichigo. He complied as they all sat down. The Soul King isn't evil, he doesn't like to interfere with the lives of others and prefers to let others live on their own terms and make their own decisions. He only gets involved with affairs of Serite when necessary and even then only in the most dire of emergencies. The reason why Aizen told you he was evil is because he believed that the Soul King should interfere, that he should rule with fear and an iron grip instead of letting Central 46 handle everything, and that none of us should have free will of our own. The Soul King doesn't believe that way, and neither do I. He and I have believed for a long time that we each live our own lives, walk our own paths, and that we will inevitably make our own mistakes, but fixing them is our job, not his. The reason we were all born with free will is so that we could each create our own destinies, not have them written out for us as Aizen would have done. Yamamoto said. Do you understand, Ichigo? The Soul King wants us to decide for ourselves the path we choose to walk and take all the consequences or benefits that come with that choice. Yamamoto asked. Ichigo nodded. Good, now I think we should continue. After all, you've got grandparents to meet and fiancés to introduce. Yamamoto said. As they approached the exit, Yamamoto stopped and looked directly at the Aranker. Here, he said. Put those cloaks on, they will shield you from prying eyes until they reach the Shiba family compound. He said. Why should we? The fraction protested. Because, young one, there are people on the other side of the gate that will not be as sympathetic of your presence as Ichigo, and the rest of us are. In fact, they will probably kill you the moment they lay eyes on you, regardless of who you're with, Yamamoto said. Over my dead body. Ichigo shouted. If you aren't careful, Ichigo, it will be over your dead body. There are individuals in the noble plane just as powerful as Aizen and would not hesitate to kill you. Yamamoto said. I'm not worried about Yamaji, remember what I did to Aizen? Ichigo asked as he received a nod from Yamamoto. Well, compared to the power I had then, the power I have now would make Aizen look like a toddler by comparison, and my speed has increased as much as my power. Ichigo said. Yamamoto looked at Ichigo incredulously and said, if your power has increased that much, then neither you nor the Aranker should have to worry, but I would still like them to wear the cloaks just in case. They don't have to cover their heads, just the rest of their bodies. Why leave the heads uncovered? Ichigo asked. Because if you're as strong as you claim, I would very much like to see it by having you get rid of some arrogant fools for me. Yamaji said. A thumbs up and a big dumb grin plastered across Ichigo's face was Yamamoto's only reply. The gate opened and, like Yamaji predicted, the moment the spiritual pressure of the Aranker was detected, they were attacked, as was Ichigo and Yamamoto. Ichigo moved into action and began to take them out one by one. Yamaji, are these the fools you were telling me about? He asked. Yamamoto nodded in response. Ichigo, I know you don't want to hurt them, but doing so is the only way they will leave you alone. Yamamoto said. Very well, Ichigo said. You ignorant fools, how dare you attack a member of the Shiba clan? That's a mistake you're going to pay dearly for. Ichigo shouted. Ichigo took Zangetsu off his back, channeled his spirit energy into the blade and swung it at his enemies and shouted Jutsuga Tensho. The crescent moon-shaped arc of blue energy went hurtling towards them but landed just in front of them, creating a shockwave that sent them flying into the Siki stone wall of the Shiba clan compound that was almost a mile away from their current position, with a loud crash that echoed throughout the entire noble plain. To say that Yamamoto was pleased would be an understatement. Which way is Yamaji? Ichigo asked. Follow the ignorant fools. He replied. Ichigo's sweat dropped and thought, why do I feel like a little girl and her little dog are going to show up asking directions to the Emerald City? They finally arrived at the main gate to the Shiba compound. Halt. State your name and business. The guards exclaimed. My name is Ichigo Kurosaki, son of Isen Shiba, and I have come to see my grandparents and claim leadership of the clan. He said. What proof have you? The guards asked. Ichigo pulled out the red envelope his father gave him and asked, is this proof enough? Indeed it is, my lord. The guard said as they knelt before Ichigo. Forgive us for asking, my lord, but why do you not carry the Shiba surname? The guards asked as they showed Ichigo and his guests to the elders. Kurosaki was my mother's name and it's complicated, he said, downcast. The guards knew by the look on his face that it was a very difficult and painful subject, so they didn't mention it further. Thank you. He said. For what? The guards replied. For not continuing with your line of questioning, the subject of my mother is still quite difficult for me to talk about. Ichigo replied. The guard smiled and said, think nothing of it, sir. If I may, sir, who are the little girls walking next to you? One of the guards asked. The one on my left is Yuzu and the one on my right is Karen, they're my younger twin sisters, Ichigo replied. Then your grandparents will be very happy to see all three of you. The guard said. Why's that? Ichigo asked. Because twins in the Shiba family are rare. The guard answered. Here we are. The guard said. Are you ready, sir? They asked. Ichigo nodded. Good luck, sir, they said. Karen, Yuzu, are you ready? Ichigo asked. They nodded to signify they were. Wait. One of the guards said. Karen-sama, Yuzu-sama, I am afraid neither one of you can go in just yet. The guard said. But why? Yuzu asked as she started to cry. Because Yuzu-chan, this is something Ichigo needs to do alone, Yoruichi answered as Yuzu and Karen went and hugged her, and she returned the hug. As the doors opened, Ichigo couldn't see anything as it was dark in the room, so he just went in. Sit down. A voice said from the darkness as part of the room lit up directly in front of him with a large red pillow sitting on the floor. What makes you think you are fit to lead this clan? A voice from the darkness asked. I don't know that I am fit to lead, but I don't know that I'm not either. I would like the opportunity to find out, Ichigo said. Who gave you that envelope you carry? A young-sounding female voice said. My father. Ichigo said. Who is that? Another voice asked. Isen Kurosaki, although he used to go by Isen Shiba. Ichigo said. Why does he go to Kurosaki and not Shiba? The original voice asked. Forgive me, but that question touches on subject matter that is very painful for me and difficult for me to speak of. Ichigo said. I see, but I am sorry, young man, for you will have to during this interview, so please answer the previous question. A voice told him. The name Kurosaki was my mother's family name, and my father took it to protect me and my little sisters from rogue elements that would seek to harm us. Ichigo said. I trusted his Aizen Sasuke, whom you are referring to. Another voice said. Yes, Ichigo replied. Ichigo Kurosaki, I can see your downcast face when your mother is mentioned. I can infer by that something has happened to her. The voice said. Ichigo's nod was all the answer they needed. What happened to her? The same voice asked. Ichigo took in a breath. She was murdered by a hollow named Grand Fisher when I was 9 years old. It happened right in front of me. I came to and discovered that her mutilated body was lying on top of me and I was covered in her blood. She sacrificed her life so I could live and I never really got over it. He said as tears started to stream down his face. Ichigo's family in the darkness could see how difficult it was for him, as well as the tears in his eyes, and decided to stay away from that line of questioning. Ichigo, we see that was incredibly difficult for you and that you miss her a great deal. You have our condolences on your loss, so we will not ask those kinds of questions anymore. But you must understand, being the leader of a noble clan will force you to do things you don't want to do and talk about things you'd rather not do. That is something you must accept and be prepared for. The voice said. Is there anything else you'd like to know? Ichigo asked. Yes, a voice answered. What was she like? The voice asked. She was my light in the darkness. Ichigo said. What do you mean? The voice asked. I grew up knowing that the world I lived in was a dark and evil place, and that she was my light that cut through that darkness and protected me from the evils of the world. She always told me primum familiae, secundo, et te. And those are the values that I live by, Ichigo said. What does that mean? Another voice asked. It's a language called Latin and translates as family first, friend second, then yourself. It was my mother's way of telling me to always put the needs of others before your own. Ichigo said. Anything else you want to know? He asked. No, I don't believe that will be necessary. The voice said. The letter in your hand opens it. Another voice said. Lights. The same voice said as the room became brighter and Ichigo could now see the people who were asking him all those questions. Ichigo opened the letter and read it. Ichigo, if you are reading this now, it means that your interview with the elders is over and that they have deemed you worthy of leading the clan. This also means that by now I've told you the truth about your mother. I'm sorry that I kept so much from you, but know that I was only trying to protect you and your sisters and keep the three of you safe. I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become and that I've always been proud. I want you to stop blaming yourself for your mother's death. I don't blame you, and I know Masaki doesn't either. One more thing, I want grandchildren, damn it. Signed, the former head of the Shiba clan, your father Isen Shiba. The letter said. Who are you people? Ichigo asked. We, young man, are your family. I am Hanshiro Shiba, your grandfather, Akari Shiba your grandmother, and I believe you already know these two. He said. Bukaku, Ganju. Ichigo exclaimed. So where are my cute granddaughters? Akari asked. I'll get them. He said. Wait, does this mean I'm head of the clan? Ichigo asked. Yes, it does. Now go get my granddaughters. Akari said. Yes, Gran. Ichigo said as he went and opened the door. Yuzu, Karen. Ichigo called out. Oni-chan, Ichi-nai, are you head of the clan or did you screw up? Karen asked. Thanks for the confidence, Karen. Do you want to see your grandparents or not? He asked. Of course we do, Ichi-nai. She said. Then come over here so I can introduce you. They did as they were told. Hanshiro and Akari Shiba, these are your granddaughters Karen and Yuzu Kurosaki. Ichigo said. No, young man, since you're head of the clan now, it's Karen and Yuzu Shiba, Akari corrected as she promptly grabbed both girls and ran off. Where are you going, Akari? I want to at least say hello first. Hanshiro exclaimed. You can see them at dinner. She yelled back. Well, since that's done I need to get back. Ichigo said. Oh no, you aren't staying right here, you've got a lot of work to do, and you aren't leaving till it's finished. Akari said. Yes ma'am. Ichigo said in a defeated tone. Wait, if I'm head of the clan that means you have to do what I say. He said as he tried to exert his newly acquired authority. Yes, that is true, however, as you are only 15 you will only retain partial control until you prove to us that you can handle all the responsibilities or until you turn 18, whichever comes first. Akari said. Alright, so what do I need to do first? Her grandson asked. Well, the first thing you need to do is learn proper control, and for that you will need to master all aspects of and her healing arts. The next thing you will do is forge those 3 blades into true and learn to properly seal and release them. Then after that you will learn from Retsu Anohana in the art of killing, and in doing so master all 8,000 styles of swordsmanship that she knows. The next thing to do is learn in Ho-Ho in both their respective styles and become a master assassin. The final things are you will learn and master your Hollow and Quincy powers in that order. Hanshiro answered. So who will I be learning all of this from? Ichigo asked. Well, Hanshiro started to say but was cut off by an urgent messenger. Excuse me my lord and lady, you have guests from the Fawn clan here to see you, and they say it is urgent, the messenger said. Yuruchi got a smirk on her face and said, I was wondering when this was going to happen. What do you mean? Ichigo asked as he hugged her from behind. Well, Ichigo, the Fawn family being here can only mean one thing, my little bee wants into your harem. Yuruchi said. That's crazy, I thought she hated me. He said. That may have been true at one time, but your little declaration back at Squad 4 about wanting to show us proper respect I think really got to her, Yuruchi said. Hanshiro and Akari Pav. Takeshi, my old friend, to what do we owe the pleasure of a visit from you and your lovely daughter, Hanshiro said. Soifin-chan. Akari exclaimed as she ran up to the captain of Squad 2 and gave her a hug. Well, Hanshiro, it's about this marriage that the Shiba clan and the 4 great houses have decided on. We would like to put our name in the hat. Takeshi said. We may be old friends, but why should I allow it? Hanshiro asked. As you know, our clan elders are breathing down my neck to marry my daughter off to a respectable family, and the Amita clan has made several overtures, but my daughter hates her lieutenant who is the heir of the Amita clan and wants nothing to do with him or his family. I believe she called them a clan of fat, lazy, womanizing slobs, allowing an arrangement between our 2 families, as well as the 4 great houses, would put the Font family on equal footing as the 4 great houses, with the added benefit of getting the elders off my back and give my daughter a chance at happiness, which is all I want anyway. Takeshi said. Soifin-chan, is this what you want as well? Akari asked. Yes, it is. Soifin answered. Why? Hanshiro asked. Because I don't want to be forced into a marriage with my moronic lieutenant, I want to marry someone I could grow to love as much as I already respect, and Ichigo is that person. Soifin said. But why do you love him? Hanshiro asked yet again. I have a lot of reasons. I guess first and foremost is because Yuruchi-sama does, and she has always been an excellent judge of character. The selfless attitude that he brings with him to the battlefield, he always worries for others, never just himself, his competence in combat, his strength both physical and spiritual, and his dependability. All are things that I respect and admire as well as hold in high regard, and your grandson has them in spades. Never once throughout the entire war with Aizen did he complain about doing something, or when he was given orders that conflicted with personal beliefs he just followed orders and did what needed to be done. Not to mention the fact that he's hot. Soifin said. Hanshiro, what do you think? Akari asked. I say welcome to the family my dear, but young lady, you will also be tasked with helping Ichigo with his training, Hanshiro said with a tone of finality, looking right at Soifin. Soifin simply shed a few straight tears and said thank you. Ichigo's pav. Well, look who's coming, Ichigo, Yuruchi said. Ichigo stopped her neck long enough to look up and see Soifin headed right for them. What the hell is she doing here? He asked, only loud enough for Yuruchi to hear. Well, going by the look on her face I'd say she is probably wife number 10. Yuruchi responded. What, you can't be serious? She hates me, why would she possibly want to marry me? He said. Ichigo, I don't hate you, I may not like how you can carelessly laugh things off, but I can get over it, Soifin said as she casually walked up to Ichigo and gave him a searing hot. Wow, was the only thing Ichigo said as she pulled away from him. Your father is here with your other 2 fiancés and a guest, Hanshiro said. Good evening, ooh. Isin exclaimed as he came from out of nowhere to make a sneak attack against his son. On reflection, Ichigo grabbed his father's leg and hurled him into the nearest dark corner of the room. What the hell do you think you're doing? You just got healed and you start this shit, stupid goat-chin. Ichigo exclaimed. Just wanted to see if you were out of your slump. Isin said. Why is Matsumoto here at a private family affair? Ichigo asked. It's because this is a private family affair that she's here. Isin replied. Ichigo, Ranjiku and I were dating before I left the Soul Society. In fact, if Aizen hadn't done what he did, it's very likely that she instead of Masaki would be your mother right now. So after some talking, the two of us decided to rekindle our relationship and pick up where we left off, only this time without Aizen to get in the way. That is why immediately following your wedding Ranjiku will have the wedding we were denied because of Aizen's treachery," Isen said as Ichigo and everyone else was shocked by this declaration. "If that's what makes you happy, old man, then I congratulate you both. However, don't go thinking that Ranjiku is a replacement for my mother. That kind of selfish bullshit ain't gonna fly, old man. I sincerely hope that's not what this is, because as head of the Shiba clan I won't allow it. You can get married if you want, but it sure as hell will not be in this compound," Ichigo said with a tone of finality. Isen and Ranjiku and everyone else was shocked at what just came out of Ichigo's mouth, but they could understand it. He didn't blame himself for his mother's death any longer, but he hadn't completely gotten over it yet either. "No, Ichigo, that's not what this is. As a woman and a wife your mother was irreplaceable. I was just as happy with her as I was with Ranjiku all those years ago, but that happiness was stolen from me and Ranjiku because of Aizen's selfishness. She and I both need to get it back, and you, Yuzu, and Karen need a mother again, even if she is just a stepmother. There are things that only mothers can teach daughters, and both your mother and Ranjiku have missed out on that. Ranjiku and I aren't doing this for our own happiness, we're doing it for yours and the girls. I hope you can understand this," Isen said. "I do," to add, "I just needed to hear you say it," Ichigo said. The next thing he did shocked everyone, including Isen. Ichigo walked up to Ranjiku, gave her a big hug, and said welcome to the family. Karen and Yuzu followed suit, and everyone else offered both happy couples well wishes before Yamamoto banged his cane on the ground to get everyone's attention. "Since this is a private family affair, my wife and I have something we would like to ask Orihime," he said. "Orihime-chan, my husband and I have been made aware that back in the human world, you have no other family to depend on, at least not what we would consider family. You have an aunt, but the way she treats you, you can't really call her family," Am said. "You're wrong," Orihime said. "I don't even have that anymore. She died just before Aizen abducted me." "I am sorry to hear that, young one, but as I was saying, my husband and I were wondering if you would consider letting us, the Yamamoto clan, adopt you and bring you into the family as a daughter before your marriage to young Ichigo here," Am said. I don't know what to say," Orihime said as tears streamed down her face. She ran up and gave Lord and Lady Yamamoto and gave them both a hug, and that was all the answer they needed. "Since my wife and I can take your reaction as a yes, there are some things that must be taken care of first," Head Captain Yamamoto said. "Okay, what?" Orihime said as tears stained her face. She was standing next. Retsu latched onto her future big sister. "First we must get Urahara Kisu to get you out of your human body by severing your soul chain. Doing so would basically kill you, and you could become a true soul reaper like Ichigo. Next, immediately following the severing of your soul chain, you will be given an Asauchi to imprint your soul on and forge your own dot. The final step is your training. You will not only be trained by your mother and I, but also by the people that trained your future husband, including your new big sister on whom you are latched. But first we must send you back with a delegation to clean out your apartment and get you out of your human body," Yamamoto said as Orihime very happily nodded. I think I know of a way to help Orihime's transition along," Ichigo said. "Okay, I'm listening," Yamamoto said. "Well, I believe Kisu can create a device to transfer Soul Reaper powers into her immediately following the cutting of her soul chain, in much the same way I first gained Soul Reaper powers. This way she wouldn't need to wait for the Asauchi imprinting and run the risk of becoming a hollow." Ichigo said, "I believe you, your wife, and Anohana would be perfect to contribute you for this process," he said. "That is a good idea for Ichigo," Yamamoto said. "But then I will talk to Urahara and get the ball rolling," Ichigo said, to which Yamamoto nodded, giving permission to go ahead. "Oh, just for a walk to stretch my legs, wanna come?" she asked. "Sure," Soifin replied. As Soifin and Yoruchi walked out of the Sinkamen from the Noble Plain and into the Rukan district, Soifin couldn't help but ask her former mentor's advice. "Yoruchi, do you ever wonder what life would be like for us if we never met Ichigo?" she asked. "Every day," she replied. "And?" Soifin said. "And what?" Yoruchi said, staring at Soifin with questioning eyes. Soifin just glared at her as if to say, answer the fucking question already. "Oh. Well, without Ichigo our lives would be boring and meaningless. But Ichigo did do something that I will always be grateful for. He helped reunite me with my dear sweet little bee, whom I think of as a little sister," Yoruchi said, causing Soifin to blush. Little did either of the ladies realize that they were being watched by members of the stealth force. Just then the stealth force members watching them appeared in front of them. "We have come on behalf of the Amita clan to bring Captain Soifin back for her arranged marriage to Lieutenant Amita," one of the men said. "What arranged marriage? As far as I know I have one finance and it isn't Amita," Soifin shouted. That's right, both she and I are arranged to be the head of the Shiba clan. Ichigo Kurosaki Shiba, Yoruichi said, causing most of the stealth force members to back off, except for one who promptly put a blade to Yoruichi's dot. You will come with us, Captain Soifin, or Yoruichi will die right here, the man said. Soifin then drew her blade, looked at Yoruichi, who nodded to her and said, you just made the biggest mistake of your very short lives. Soifin flashed around all the men present and killed them all in an instant, only sparing the man who held her big sister hostage. Soifin looked at the man and said, I'll give you one chance and only one. What is the name of the fool that sent you here? The way she looked at him, he looked as if he was going to piss his pants. He finally said it was Lieutenant Amita and the elders of the Fawn clan. Shocked by what she just learned, she asked, was my father in on this too? No ma'am, he has been imprisoned in the maggot's nest, the scared stealth force man said. Thank you, that's all I needed to hear, she said. In a move that the untrained eye would believe was choreographed, Soifin flashed behind him and plunged her blade into his heart from behind, and at the same time Yoruichi ducked underneath the blade, turned his wrist and elbow 40 degrees, and plunged the man's own blade through the center of his. Yoruichi contacts your father to let him know what's happened and ask him to convene a meeting of the nobility and get them to revoke the status of the Amita clan. Also contact Ichigo and let him know what has happened. I am going to contact the head captain and ask him to mobilize squads 1, 2, 4 and 6 to surround the Fawn and Amita clan estates and keep them from escaping while I go after my father, Soifin said. Alright, I'll do it, but be careful what the Amita family is capable of when pushed too far, Yoruichi said. Soifin nodded and headed towards the maggot's nest to get her father out of prison. As she got there, she suppressed her energy to almost nothing, so low that only the most skilled soul reapers could detect it. She proceeded to knock out the guards and seal her in a pocket dimension before heading inside. Once inside, she began the search for her father, and she found him under guard by her favorite punching bag, her lieutenant. She couldn't help the malicious grin on her face at that moment. She knew she would enjoy this. Captain Soifin, come on out, I know you're there, Amita said. How did you know? She asked. That's easy, the perfume you wear is unmistakable, he said. Why don't you just return to the manor and get ready for our wedding like a good girl? Amita said. The reason is quite simple, Amita, because I hate you. I always have, and your actions today are just further justification. I will not marry a man who cares. I knew you would say T. Just then the rest of his reply as they heard clapping. Clap. 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 I knew you had balls for brains, Amita, but I didn't think it was quite this bad. Now that I think about it, a housefly has a higher IQ than you. You really must be stupid if you thought you could take one of my finances from me without me fighting for her, Ichigo said as he came walking in with the head captain and the captain of Squad 12. Soifin ran over to her fiancé and felt herself being wrapped in his strong caring arms. Ichigo is my one and only fiancé, Amita, and the only one I will ever let touch me like this, she said as she could see her lieutenant's eyes filling with hatred, anger and rage. Ichigo drew his blade and said, either you release Mr. Fawn or I'm gonna start carving. As he said this, his eyes turned blue and his spiritual pressure began to rise rapidly. Amita released his prisoner and started begging Ichigo for mercy and forgiveness, which fell on deaf ears. That is until Soifin kicked the fat lazy prick in the nut several times and said, now try having kids, bastard. Soifin, darling, I think you probably turned his jewels to mush after the third kick, so why 8 times? He asked. I wanted to make sure he got the point, she said with an evil grin. By the way, Ichigo, the head captain called out. Yes, Ichigo replied. There is a captain's meeting in the morning and you are expected to attend. Ask Soifin or Retsu about it and they have the details. I wish I could tell you myself, but I have somewhere I need to be, the head captain said. Kurisuchi, what are you doing here? Soifin said. I came with the head captain, he said. Well, now that your business is done you can leave, you shouldn't be here in the first place, Soifin said. I will go anywhere I damn well please, I don't need your permission, Captain, Kurisuchi spat venomously. Just then Soifin flashed over and grabbed Kurisuchi by the and said, this is the maggot's nest and it is controlled by the Cheyenne clan, the Fawn clan, and very soon by Shiba clan. Once I get married, and all visitors must have our permission to come here or anywhere else controlled by the aforementioned clans, and you would do well to remember that in your place, Captain. You should also remember that as an assassin I know over 50 different ways of killing you without leaving a mark, Soifin said as her eyes became dark and filled with killing intent and she began to rise. She dragged Kurisuchi and Amita out by their S and dumped them each at Squad 12 and Squad 4 respectively. That evening at Shiba Manor, Ichigo was lying in bed with his ladies after dinner when he turned to Soifin and asked. Soifin, the head captain said something about a meeting I'd need to attend in the morning. Yes, just some questions about you and I would imagine what they saw in your inner world, she replied. What time does it start? He asked. At 8 AM sharp, don't worry, one of us will wake you up and then we can all go together, she replied. By the way, Soifin, what did you do to the Fawn clan elders? Ichigo asked with an evil grin. Ask Yoruichi. By the time I got there it was all over with and she had them cowering in the corner. She replied. Well, Yoruichi. Ichigo said. All I said was that Soifin already had a fiancé whom she dearly loved, and if those old fools kept sticking their nose where it didn't belong, the consequences wouldn't be an enjoyable experience for them. Yoruichi said with a grin that scared Ichigo, not mention could make an ordinary man crap his pants. Ichigo, I've got a surprise for you, not to mention mom, dad and big sis. Orihime said. Okay, what is it? Ichigo asked. I'll tell you at breakfast in the morning. Orihime said. Flashback 2 weeks ago. Orihime had gone to Karakura town after Lord and Lady Yamamoto made the offer for them to adopt her to have her soul removed from her body. Nobody knew this, but her growth rate was even more monstrous than Ichigo's. When Karakura town head Captain Yamamoto, his wife and her new big sister took a day off to come along. They had brought a blank Asauchi with them which Retsu was holding. When they got there, Kisuke already had the device to enable the transferal of Shinigami powers in case it was ever needed for Ichigo. The device itself was really a sword that was capable of containing and transferring vast amounts of, and to an individual all it really needed was the energy required. They all got down to Kisuke's training room and were amazed at what they saw. The sword was already there waiting to be glowing with power, mostly because Ichigo had left the Soul Society briefly to donate some of his own. The swords have been waiting for you, Lord and Lady Yamamoto and Captain Unohana. Please add your power to the sword so we can get your new daughter back home. Kisuke said. They all charged the sword with their power, after which it was handed to Retsu. How did you know, and why was the sword already brimming with power when we got here? Unohana asked. For future reference I go by Retsu Yamamoto when not in the presence of my squad. She said. Forgive me, Retsu. I was unaware. To answer your question, your future husband came by last night and gave a small portion of his power to the sword to give Orihime-chan's dormant Shinigami powers a boost. Now Orihime-chan, the process will be fairly simple. I will remove your soul from your body and cut your soul chain, then Retsu will thrust that blade in her hand into your heart. After that you will remain here and start communing with your sword while I turn your human body into it, Kisuke said. As soon as she was ready, Kisuke began. He cut her soul chain, leaving enough so that it could be repaired if this didn't work, and then Retsu thrust the sword into Orihime's heart. There was a blinding flash of light, and when the light faded there Orihime stood with a faint orange glow in the standard Shihakusho, with orange lilies going down the hakama and picking colored ones on them. The obi was also pink and orange. After a few seconds she collapsed. Kisuke went to make sure she was okay, but as soon as he touched her he was shocked. What happened to Kisuke? The head captain asked. She's in her inner world talking with her, apparently she doesn't want any interruptions. He replied. Orihime's inner world. Hello, is anyone there? Orihime asked but got no reply. Where am I? She thought to herself. Orihime-chan. A voice yelled, tackling her to the ground. Who are you? Orihime asked. I'm silly. The woman said. When you had your dormant soul reaper powers awakened, so too was I awakened, and when that happened your shun couldn't stay with you any longer, so they decided to fuse themselves with me, and in doing so they gave all of their abilities to me. I also took on the likeness of your friend Lily, so you wouldn't be frightened when we met. Sorry this place looks so blah right now, but in order for you to see your true inner world, you must pass the test for your dot, the woman said. Okay, well what do I have to do? Orihime asked. All you need to do is tell me the answer to a simple question. However, before you do there are a couple of things I wish to say. First, I have been watching you from the very beginning, and I am very proud of you. In spite of all the hardships you've gone through, you never lost sight of what was truly important. Second, despite the fact that you have to share him, that boy you're marrying is hot. The woman told her. Orihime blushed and said, I know. Now your test is fairly straightforward. You must tell me what our favorite colors are. She said. That's it? Orihime exclaimed. That's it? Her said. Well, Ichigo always said that it was the truest representation of the wielder's heart and soul, so I'm going to say pink and orange. Orihime said. Why orange and pink? The woman asked. Because they're my favorite colors and you're a representation of my heart and soul. Orihime said as the woman looked at her beaming with pride. Correct. She said. Okay Hime-chan, I'm going to show you the correct way to release me and then give you the release command in my name. When you release me, hold me like this. She showed Orihime as she turned slightly to the left and twirled her blade in her hand and brought the hilt up to the left side of her face. Then she stabbed Orihime in the dot. Hime-chan, listen to me. I know this is uncomfortable, but it is necessary, so focus on me and the pain will go away. She said. Orihime did as she was told and sure enough the pain did go away. Good Hime-chan, now I am a very rare type of, I'm a field combat type. What that means is that I can change the battlefield to suit the needs of my wielder. It also means that any damage done to my wielder is negated and redirected toward our enemy by a factor of 10 times. I am also the only in all of Soul Society that has the potential to match your fiancé's Zangetsu in open combat, but you won't get to that level of power until you master my, which will be difficult because mine is one of the most destructive in Soul Society history. What I'm doing right now though is giving you the knowledge on my own so you can master it first. My release command is reject reality. My name is Kaizetsu An Rejection Princess. I am also one of 3 sisters to Kisuke Urahara's Benihime. Ichigo's sisters have the other 2. We are done, but when you go back to your world, touch the things they brought with them, and my physical form will be forged, and remember to train with me every day, she said, pulling her blade from Orihime's and giving her a hug. How do you know Yuzu-chan and Karen-chan have sisters? Orihime asked. Because I can feel their presence in those 2 cute little girls. She told her. Back in the present. The sun came shining into Ichigo's bedroom window, and Soifun and Yoruichi couldn't resist playing a prank on Ichigo. They both got out of bed, and Yoruichi got into her cat form while Soifun got the camera. Yoruichi sat on his face and made the peace sign with her paw and stuck her tongue between what would have been her fingers, just as Soifun took the picture. Yoruichi also went and stuck her tongue in Ichigo's ear, which got the desired reaction. What the hell, Yoruichi? Why the hell did you stick your tongue in my ear? Ichigo exclaimed. Well, you weren't waking up, so I had to try something. Yoruichi said with an evil grin. She really did get a kick out of teasing Ichigo, though she would never tell him this. Just as Ichigo got up to get a shower, Soifun walked over and showed Yoruichi the picture she took. Yoruichi grinned and said, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of mileage out of this one. On Ichigo, we need to get breakfast and make our way to the captain's meeting. Soifun said. Head Captain Yamamoto came to breakfast, as did his wife, so they could see Orihime and everyone else. Orihime, last night you said had a surprise for us, are you gonna tell us or just sit there? Ichigo asked. Better than that, I'll show you. She said, sitting there beaming with pride. Orihime got up, walked a few feet, drew her and said, reject reality, Kaizetsu Hime. The blade had an orange and pink hilt. The blade was long orange and pink, just like the hilt. Orange on the top half and spine, with a secondary cutting edge which started at the midpoint with 6 sharp points on the cutting edge, ending with an inward curve towards the tip, and pink on the bottom half with a silver butterfly guard that had sharp serrated edges to the wings. And think Ichigo's Bankai during the Fullbring arc, only more nasty looking, not something you'd want to run into in a dark alley. Everyone was shocked. She had only just received her a couple of weeks ago and was already able to release her. Her mother, father, and big sister were very pleased. Retsu ran up and gave her a hug and said, I'm very proud of you, you're already released, and only after 2 weeks. That's practically unheard of. Indeed. The head captain said. What can she do? He asked. She can reject reality within an area of 250 feet around me, and any attacks on my person by the enemy regardless of distance are negated and dealt to my enemy instead by a factor of 10. I also retain access to my original powers due to them fusing with my. I need only say the name of the technique in conjunction with the name of my to use them. Orihime answered. Very good, young lady. I'm very proud of you. The head captain said as he gave Orihime a warm embrace. However, one of my former abilities has changed to suit my new powers as a Shinigami. Orihime said. Okay, which one? Am asked very enthusiastically. Tsubaki was my only flower capable of a direct attack, but since you donated your to awaken my Shinigami powers, Tsubaki changed into an ability called Mugen no Yari. Using the power of the technique, Kaizetsu Hime can extend at lightning fast speeds and impale my enemy from almost 300 yards out before they have time to so much as blink, kinda like Jinichimaru, only much faster. It is called Mugen no Yari, or Infinity Spear, because regardless of my own power the speed of the technique remains constant. She said. Once she sealed Kaizetsu home and sat back down, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect her to have such a powerful abilities this soon. They expected it to take at least a year for her to release her, but were very proud of her, as evidenced when her new mother and big sister ran up and gave her a hug with big grins on their faces. Even Ichigo gave her a hug and told her he was very proud of her for her accomplishment, followed by his own goofy grin. Orihime, I can tell you why Tsubaki changed. Ichigo said. Why? It's because I had already visited the Urahara store to donate a little of my own beforehand, and when I did I channeled while I was doing it. Shinso and I felt that we wanted you to be safe, so we set it up so that my energy would focus on Tsubaki to give him the ability he has now. Then I also set up 1 or 2 other surprises for you that you will become aware of the closer you get to mastering Kaizetsu Hime. Ichigo said. Captain's meeting. So Ichigo, mind telling us why you have been inside of you that looks like the Quincy King, which Captain Kairaku said. Certainly. Ichigo replied. 6 years ago my mother and I were walking home from the dojo where I was learning karate and I saw a little girl about to jump in the river. Like the good little boy my mother raised me to be, I ran over in an attempt to help her and after that everything went dark. I woke up a short time later in a pool of blood with my mother's mutilated corpse on top of me. What does this have to do with your question, you ask? Well, my father, as all of you are aware, is a pure-blooded soul reaper and my mother was a pure-blooded Quincy, and as Iwich was the creator of the Quincy, a piece of him is within all of them, pure blood or not. Ichigo said. My mother is also how I gained my hollow powers as well. He further elaborated. How is that possible? Captain Hitsujiya asked. You can thank Aizen for that one. Ichigo spat venomously. In what way? Kensei asked. 18 years ago Aizen created an artificial Lord-class hollow called White, using a Shinigami soul as the base, and sent it to the human world, where it started killing soul reapers, and my father Isin Shiba went to investigate without permission, and ended up getting his kicks. Eventually the hollow attacked my mother, and she defeated it with an arrow through the head. 3 days after the attack my dad went back to Karakura town again without permission, and found that my mother's soul had been infiltrated by the hollow, and she was on her way to a soul suicide. Kisuke found a way to suppress the hollow, but it meant my father would have to use his powers to suppress the hollow inside my mother. Of course he agreed without hesitation, and from then on my father's days as a soul reaper were over. That is until now, the rest you already know. Ichigo said. Head Captain, I demand to have Kurosaki as a research specimen. Kurisuchi said. No. The head captain exclaimed. Well, I'll just have to take his sisters. I'm sure they'll be just as good. The deranged captain of Squad 12 said. This statement got a rise out of Ichigo and Ranjiku, who both flashed over to Kurisuchi and said if he ever touched Yuzu and Karen, or so much as looked at them cross-eyed, that they would kill him. Head Captain, I believe that the worm behind me will miss her wedding permanently if she doesn't let go of me. Just as Kurisuchi said this, Ichigo's began to rise. Ichigo looked at Kurisuchi, grabbed him and said, tell me Kurisuchi, since you enjoy dissecting things, how about you assist me with a dissection of my own, and at the same time I'll get to show you what your brain really looks like up close. Ranjiku is going to marry my father, as such I already consider her family, and anyone that harms those I care about, regardless of who they are, will die. As he placed the tip of Shinso underneath Kurisuchi's chin. Ichigo. The head captain said, trying to release the tension in the room. Yes sir. Ichigo replied. You don't have to address me like that, you know. Yamamoto said. Ichigo grinned and said. As you are not only the head captain of the 13 court guard squads, but my elder and someone whom I greatly admire and respect, even though I didn't always act like I will address you properly, however I will address you informally in private, if that is okay with you. He stated. Very well. Yamamoto stated as he nodded with a smile. Ichigo turned to Kurisuchi and said, since that part of my conversation is over, I will warn Kurisuchi once and only once. My sisters and the rest of my family are in the noble plane. If you or anyone from your squad sets foot in the noble plane without my permission, or comes within 500 yards of the Shiba clan compound or any member of my family, I will send you and them back to that shithole you call a squad in pieces. Ichigo and Ranjiku let go of Kurisuchi only for Ichigo to raise his starfish captain clown to the ground just to get the point across. So Ichigo, how far along are you in your training? Captain Yukitake asked. I've mastered both styles of Hakuda and Ho-Ho, as well as all assassination techniques. I have also mastered Zenjutsu and achieved masterful control of it with the help of Soifun, Yoruchi, and Anohana. The only things left are and. Ichigo said. You forgot to mention your and the. Captain Kamamura said. That's done too. I reforged Zangetsu and forged Kyoka Sujetsu and Shinso to suit me and my abilities and mastered their powers. I also mastered the powers of the Hejoku all in the last 2 weeks. As far as Zangetsu is concerned, my inner hollow merged with my Shinigami powers while I was in my mother's and became Zangetsu, but since the reforging using my inner hollow, my Shinigami powers, and my inner Quincy became Zangetsu. Ichigo said. This earned shocked gasps from everyone in the room except his trainers, who just happened to be 3 of his future wives. How is that possible? Captain. Hitsujiya asked. You mean you've only mastered right? It is possible because when I reforged Zangetsu I merged all powers together, and my other can also tap into my Quincy powers to aid me in combat. No, Captain. I am not just referring to mastering my, I have also mastered my. Ichigo said. Looks like you beat your record for the 2nd time, Hitsugaya-kun. Captain Kairaku said. Oh, and something else, Shinso's Bankai Kami Shiny no Yari does something far different than what Jin said it did, but I won't discuss it in front of Captain Clown here. Ichigo said as he pointed to Kurisuchi. Which got quite a few laughs around the room and an evil glare from Kurisuchi. Then given this new information I see no reason to hold off on my decision any longer. Ichigo Kurosaki Shiba for your services to the Soul Society, your defeat of Aizen Sasuke, and since you are now head of the Shiba clan, I would like to offer you a position of captain within the guard squads. The head captain said. What position would I be taking as all current positions are filled? Ichigo asked. I have formed a new squad, from this day forth we shall be known as the 14 court guard squads, and you shall be the captain of this new squad. Yamamoto said. I object to this. Kurisuchi exclaimed. But before anyone could shut him up, Byakuya fired a low power into Kurisuchi's knee and promptly told him to shut up. What would be the duties of this new squad? Ichigo asked. The new squad would comprise a new covert ops unit called the SOF or Soul Society Special Operations Force, and the duties of the squad would be similar to Squad 2's, but would focus primarily in the gathering of intelligence, as well as perform recon. But your primary responsibility would be to act as our last line of defense against threats like Aizen, so all members would have to be captain class or pretty close. Yamamoto said as he noticed Ichigo's evil grin. Very well, head captain. Yamamoto, I accept. However, I am sure you realize that Orihime and I will be spending a good deal of our time in the world of the living until we graduate high school. Ichigo stated as he was given his Heiori. I do, and there have already been allowances made for that. Yamamoto said. Is there anything I will need to do in the meantime? Ichigo asked. Aside from finding officers to fill the squad, not everything is already set up, even your barracks are already built. Good, Ichigo stated. I would however ask that after the meeting is over that you and Captains Hitsujiya, Kichiki, Kairaku, Anohana, Soifin, Yukitake and Lieutenants Abarai, Kichiki, Nanao and Matsumoto remain behind, for there is something else that must be discussed in private. Ichigo said. The head captain nodded his head in agreement and said then this meeting is now adjourned and you are all dismissed. Okay Ichigo, we're alone. Yoruichi stated. What did you want to discuss? Head Captain Yamamoto, could you seal this room and put up a soundproof barrier? Ichigo asked. This request got a lot of looks, but Yamamoto compiled without saying a word. Okay, to start with, it has come to my attention that we have another traitor in our ranks, but unlike Aizen, this person didn't come out in the open. This person has done so from the shadows for over 100 years, by betraying the very principles upon which 14 court guard squads was founded, and in doing so, they bring shame and dishonor to not only the Yamato clan, but the Shiba, Shihoin, Fan, Kichiki, and Kasumi clans also, as well as all the Shinigami who serve the Soul Society with honor and distinction. Ichigo said. This statement got everyone in the room very upset. Who is Ichigo? Yoruichi asked. Mayuri Kurisuchi. Ichigo said. Wait, how could he be a traitor? Kairaku asked. He has done nothing but help us. Yukitake said. Help us openly, yes, but it's what he has done covertly that makes him a traitor. Ichigo said. What has he done? Retsu asked as she stood next to her fiancé and entwined her arm with his. Do you remember when I invaded the Soul Society shortly before Aizen revealed himself as a traitor? He asked as everyone nodded. Well, after everything was over with, my friend Uryu pulled me aside and told me that Kurisuchi is responsible for the deaths of over 2,600 Quincy by bringing them here illegally and using them as lab rats for experimentation. Uryu even showed me this picture of our grandfather Soken Ishida, which was the last Quincy that Kurisuchi experimented on. Ichigo said as they all looked at the picture and were visibly ill from looking at it. But that isn't all, he also used Soul Reapers in his experiments and even used them as living bombs during the invasion, as Uryu saw him blow them up just so he could get his hands on Orihime and do the same to her. This brings his body count to well over 4,000 individuals. Ichigo said. This statement got Yamamoto very angry, but not at what he tried to do then, but what he could be planning in the future. Captain Soifin, you will arrest Captain Kurisuchi at once. Yamamoto ordered. Wait, I know you want him out of here just as much as I do, but this isn't the way to go about this. Ichigo said. We need hard irrefutable evidence that he can't explain away. What would you suggest Ichigo-kun do? Kairaku said. Simple, you guys made me captain of Squad 14, I think it's time I use the authority of my new position, don't you? He asked with an evil grin. Meet me at Shiba Clan Manor at 7:30 p.m. for dinner tonight and we'll discuss it then. However, for now I need Soifin and Yoruichi to go back to Karakura town, get Kisuke and the other visors and take them straight to Shiba Manor and make sure they all keep quiet about this. I also want him to bring enough materials to make and suppress cloaks for everyone involved in the investigation. I don't want Kurisuchi getting wind of this until it's too late for him to do anything about it. I also want you to tell him to bring any equipment needed to scan the bodies of those involved for foreign substances and the means to get rid of them if found. Inform him of everything that was said here. As of right now, the name of this operation is Flycatcher. It is classified above top secret and no one outside this room or the one specified will be read in on this. As far as everyone else is concerned, this operation doesn't even exist. Retsu, I need you to go get Shinji, Rose, Kensei, and Mishiro, take them back to the manor and tell them they are invited for dinner and that I want to speak to them but nothing else. Ichigo said. Everyone nodded in the affirmative. Alright Soifun, Yoruchi, go quickly, we don't have a lot of time to get the ball rolling on this. They nodded and disappeared, heading straight for Karakura town. When they arrived, they carried out their mission, informing Kisuke and the visors of everything that was said and inviting them all back to Shiba Manor and the Noble Plain for dinner at 7:30, which they all gladly accepted. Little did everyone know that there was a surprise waiting for them back at Shiba Manor that no one was expecting. Ichigo was walking to the manor with his soon-to-be stepmother, but when they got to the gate, they saw a large cylindrical object at the back of the manor that Ichigo didn't recognize. "What's that?" he asked. The guards at the front gate said that is the Tenchurin, the carriage of the Soul King, and he is here to see you, Ichigo. Ichigo and Matsumoto's eyes went wide for a few moments and they raced off to see what was wrong. He and Matsumoto ran into the main meeting area, panicked, and asked what's wrong. Only for Ichigo to be not only greeted warmly by the Soul King himself, but also thanked for his service to not only the Soul Society, but him as well by offering his hand in thanks, which Ichigo immediately shook it. "Think nothing of it, sir, I just did the right thing and protected those that I cared about, thanks are not needed," Ichigo said. The Soul King smiled and said, "Even so, I wanted to thank the son of Masaki Kurosaki and to bring him a gift, and please call me Hideki," he told Ichigo. "Very well Hideki, if I may ask, what is the purpose of your visit?" Ichigo asked. "I just came by to drop someone off that was just dying to see her little protector," Hideki said. "How do you know that phrase?" "Only my mother called me that and she's been gone for 6 years," Ichigo exclaimed. "She was, but I kinda sorta brought her back along with a few others, and do not worry Ms. Matsumoto, you will still marry Isin, only now the two of you will share him," Hideki said. "Where is she?" Ichigo asked, understandably shaken by this new revelation. "Your mother, father and sisters are in the dining room," Hideki told him. Ichigo rushed off, only looking back to bow. "Do not worry Ichigo, I will be staying since your grandparents invited me and the royal guard to dinner this evening," he told Ichigo. Ichigo and Matsumoto ran to the dining room and were shocked by what they saw, his mother sitting at the dining room, but he also saw members of the Ishida family. "Mom," Ichigo said in a shaky voice. Masaki just turned around and gave him a smile he hadn't seen in years. After that he couldn't take it anymore, he just ran to her and gave her a hug, dropping to the ground still in her arms, crying like a little boy. "There's my little protector, my dear sweet little boy, oh how I've missed you," Masaki said. "I've missed you too mom, you don't know what it was like for dad, Karen, Yuzu, and I these past 6 years, we all missed you so much," Ichigo said, deepening the embrace. "I know Ichigo and I feel the same about all of you," she said. "You are Ranjiku Matsumoto, are you not?" she asked as she separated herself from Ichigo. "I am," Ranjiku replied. "Welcome to the family," Masaki said, giving Ranjiku a warm embrace. "Thank you," Ranjiku replied. "Ichigo, have you met your uncle Ryokan and your cousin Uryu yet?" Masaki asked. "We fought against Aizen together," he said. "But then you need to meet 4 other people," Masaki said. "These first 3 are also members of our family. May I present Saken and Sachi Ishida, your and Uryu's grandparents, and this is Kani Katajiri Ishida, Uryu's mother. The last person isn't related to us, but she is related to one of the women you're marrying. This is Hisana Kichiki, older sister of Rukia and the wife of Byakuya," Masaki said. "Mom, how is any of this possible? Not that I'm complaining, but technically none of you should be here, at least not yet," Ichigo asked. "That Ichigo is something that the Soul King should explain, which he will do at dinner," Masaki said. "It is an honor to meet all of you and welcome home," Ichigo said. "Hisana, Rukia and Byakuya are going to have a kitten when they see you. They will be here tonight, so I would prepare yourself," he said. "Thank you Ichigo," Hisana said. "Oh crap. I forgot to make arrangements for dinner. We are having more guests for dinner this evening," Ichigo said. "Relax Ichigo, the arrangements have already been made and everything's been taken care of," his grandmother said from behind him. "The Soul King is aware that you are planning an operation to get rid of Kurasuchi, and he and the royal guard would like to sit in on the briefing after dinner this evening," Akari said. Breathing deeply he said, "That's a relief. Now if you will excuse me, I've got to wait for our guests to arrive from Karakura and brief them on the situation," he said. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the FANFICLOVER 2017 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.